do, I introduce John McDonnell, Chancellor.
Thanks for inviting me down, but also to be thanks for the solidarity and loyalty that you've shown Jeremy in Wales in this last year, and particularly in these last few months. It hasn't been easy for him as an individual, and I never cease to be amazed at the calmness and the dignity in which he's withstood everything that's been thrown against him. We don't vote for individuals as individuals. This isn't some cult of personality. This is about someone who embodies what we all believe in. Those principles of socialism, of equality, democracy, fairness, all of those aspects that we believe, principles that we've campaigned for all throughout many of our lives. And that's why we voted for him last year. Matt tempted me to talk about how that came about. You've heard this story, haven't you?
No.
No? Okay. All right, but I'm not allowed. Jeremy's under strict. I'm under Jeremy's strict command, so no jokes. Chris reminded me of Jeremy's other instruction. I have to watch my language, especially about the word useless. I'm not allowed anywhere near small red books. I said this to Matt the other night. They said, why did you throw the lead book at George Osborne? And I said, well, actually, I was trying to make a political point about him selling off our assets to the Chinese state, etc. But the other reason was that, to be honest, Das Kapital is quite heavy and comes in. I'll tell you how we got here. May before last, when we lost the election, we were pretty despondent that day after we lost the election. Dreadful, if you can remember it. It was dreadful. Up until then, I thought we were going to get maybe a small majority, but at least the largest party. And it was, to be frank, it was a tragedy for all our communities. My community has suffered just like yours ever since as a result. And I wanted Ed Miliband to stick around. I didn't want him to go straight away. I thought Ed Miliband was a good bloke. I liked him. I didn't like what the media did to him. And I thought actually he could have been a good Prime Minister. I thought he could be as radical as Attlee if we could surround him and give him the support that he needed. But he went very precipitously and I was disappointed. And Jeremy and I then convened a whole series of meetings. Some of you were at it, so Darren was, and we brought the left organisations and trade unions together to tell people that there was no way, if there was going to be a leadership election, we'd ever get a left candidate on the ballot paper. So there's no point in trying. Do not take racing tips from me in the future. And we'd held 2 of those meetings and had lots of discussions, and the view was overwhelming that we should try and do our best to get a candidate on the ballot paper. And so I convened a meeting in the Socialist Campaign Group, which I chair. We literally sat around a table in the House of Commons, those half dozen of us, so we went around the table. And I said, look, it looks as though we're going to have to stand a candidate, so we've got to sort out who it is. Michael Nugent got us this soul, so we need to really think about this clearly, because whoever they stand, they're going to really come at, they'll throw everything at them. And we need people who've got experience, etc. So it came to me and I said, well, I'm not doing it again. I've done it twice and I'm so popular amongst the Parliamentary Labour Party, I can't even get on the ballot paper. Diane then said, look, I did it last time. I thought she did pretty well. I just didn't want to do it again. And literally, Jeremy was sitting at the end of the table. You know this, right? Sitting at the end of the table. We looked at him and he says, your turn, mate. And Jeremy said, oh, go on then. The reason I tell that story time and time again is because actually that's the sort of leader I want. I've been in Parliament for 20 years nearly now, with people, many of whom come into Parliament with the back of the envelope in their back pocket which says, at such and such an age I'll become an MP, at such and such an age I'll be a Minister, at such and such an age I'll be Prime Minister. And what happens is, for some, career and ambition overrides principle, And in that way, mistakes are made when we go into government. I want someone who, like Jeremy, you have to force to become the candidate leader. Not because he has no commitment or ambition for us as a movement, but he's devoid of personal ambition. It's about principle rather than theory. We agreed he'd run, and that was it. And that night we were going for a vote, and Jeremy said, will you chair the campaign committee? I said, fine, I think it's a disastrous mistake, but nevertheless, what I think we'll be able to do is maybe achieve a vote around about 25–30%. And in fact, is the case, we'd then start negotiating to try and get a left person back into shadow cabinet. And I thought that would be a major victory. So we started the campaign exactly as Matt said, and I did the traditional thing as a left organiser. What you do is you say, what Jeremy said, look, we'll go around the country, we're holding meetings, setting out our ideas, etc. And I said, well, first of all, we've got to get on the ballot paper. So we needed 35 to get on the ballot paper. So I went round and I had a fantastic team of people campaigning, and social media came into its own in that instance, putting pressure on individual MPs. And we did everything we possibly could. And yes, in these things, you do deals. I offered to sleep with people. No one took me up. And we got to the final day. It was midday. We were literally going 11:30, and the deal we'd done with 4 or 5 of them was that if we got to 34, they'd nominate us because it was the last one, and we'd get over the thing. And without 10 seconds to go, we were up to 33, and we were a couple short. And a couple of people broke ranks. They were standing there. I got them signing their forms in advance. And Gordon Marston from Blackpool and Andrew Smith from Oxford broke ranks, and they nominated, and we got over the 35. And I'll always praise them for what they did. I then had to go and find Jeremy to tell me he was a candidate. And we did exactly as Matt said. Jeremy said, come on, we'll tour around the country, we'll do all these meetings, and at least we'll have the opportunity to put our ideas. And I said to him, look, me and you touring around the country would be like last of summer wine on tour. So we got him out there, and I did that traditional thing on the left. I said to the campaign organisers, just book rooms, no more than 100 people attending, chairs that you can pull away, so that if only 20 turn up, it'll still look full. And what happened was exactly as Matt said. The first one we booked for 100, 500 people turned up, the next one we booked for 500,000 turned up, and it was just unbelievable. Jeremy did 100 of those meetings, plus the hustings, and he must have spoken, I don't know, directly up to 100,000 people. It's just extraordinary what happened. And there was a thirst for political discussion. There was a thirst for new ideas. And what Jeremy's campaign brought to it was actually yet a new form of politics, if you like, in which people were able to express their views, exactly as Matt has said, where policies were no longer being handed down from above, from a small elite group, but people were turning up in meetings like this to say, look, this is what the real world experience is for me. And during that campaign, our policies were shaped as a result of those discussions. That was our political programme arose from the very issues that people were raising at those meetings and being confronted. We had people coming from all walks of life. We had young people turning up, large numbers of young people. The story that Matt says about that Camden Centre one is apocryphal, but what he didn't say also, there were 2,000 inside the hall, for another couple of thousand outside. He had to bring up the FPU fire engine so that Jeremy could speak out of that, on top of that, to the people in the street. It was phenomenal, and the young people poured up. But they were coming up with their life experiences, as it is at the moment. Which, if you're a student, they were saying, we're paying tuition fees, and we'll come out of university 30,000 or 40,000 pounds in debt. So what emerged from those discussions, we said, well, we never voted for tuition fees, and if we go back into government, we're going to abolish them. We're going to get rid of them. Turned up and explained what life was like in schools at the moment, the pressure that they're under, teaching to the test, undermining all the professional values that they've been taught and inculcated throughout their careers about that broad education that you need to give to children to prepare them for adulthood. And how that was also a reflection of not just the cuts in education, but also what was happening in terms of academisation. So we gave them the commitment. One, that we would scrap the forced academisation that the Tories were introducing, that we'd restore democratic control of schools to local communities, but also we wanted to go into government again in the same way that Attlee with Bevan established the National Health Service. We wanted to establish a National Education Service, which was from cradle to grave, where education was no longer seen as a commodity to be bought or sold, but it was a gift from one generation to another. And you tell me what it's like here, but we had right the way across the country people turning up to explain what their housing conditions were. Matt knows this because we were in West London last night at a rally. In my constituency, I represent a working class multicultural community on the edge of London, West London, near Heathrow. I've lived there 40 years now. Tonight there'll be 200 families in bed and breakfast. We have a phenomenon called beds in sheds, where beds put up in sheds, where sheds and garages are rented. We've reinvented the back-to-back, where one family will rent the front of a house and another family will rent the back. Average rents in my constituency now between £1,400 and £1,600 a month, and it becomes unlivable. So why is that happening? Why is that happening? Well, a combination of things. One, I have to say under New Labour as well, the promotion of private landlordism on a scale that we've never seen in this country for some maybe decades. But in addition to that, the fundamental problem is that for a generation and a half now, we've failed to build homes. So the solution is straightforward, isn't it? We're going to build council homes again. I'll tell you also, I think it's a crime that if there's a property standing empty, there's a homeless family alongside it. Yeah. We have 700,000 properties in this country standing empty, 300,000 of them standing empty for more than 6 months. Some councils have the power but not the resources to take over those properties and put families in them. What we want to do is strengthen those powers and give them the resources. But alongside that as well, in certain areas of this country, rents are now prohibitive. So prohibitive that what we're seeing is social cleansing of certain areas where ordinary working people are being forced out of those particular areas. So we will reintroduce rent controls. Because in this country we used to have, some of you remember if you're old enough like me, we used to have the process of fair rents, where the council would send an officer around to assess whether it was a fair rent or not. And do you know that system isn't some utopian system? It didn't just exist here. It exists across Europe, in many European capitals. So it works, it's practical as well, pragmatic and practical as well. We also had lots of health workers coming along to talk about what's happening in the health service at the moment. The cost burden, we had people coming from management boards as well to explain the pressures that they run as a result of cuts and the cost burdens of PFIs that they've inherited as well, and the pressure that individual members of staff are under, largely as a result of policies of underinvestment and privatisation. So we said very, very clearly, working with Alison Pollock, who developed the NHS bill that we supported, we will end all privatisation in the NHS. We'll work with those health authorities, those health boards as well, to, if necessary, buy out the PFIs so that we bring them back. Because in the long term, they'll actually be cheaper to buy some of these out and bring the services directly under democratic control. Yeah. But in addition to that, we have to recognise as well the pressures that NHS staff are under. And some of them, it's heartbreaking. You know that what's happening, particularly in A&E and other services, particularly the care of the elderly at the moment. And that's as a result of the cuts and the, to be frank, successive governments who have sought to undermine the ability of the staff themselves to represent themselves. That's why, when the junior doctors go out and strike again, I'll be back on the picket line. As you know, we had a bit of a contretemps on that issue within the last shadow cabinet. We won't want this one. because most of those that in this shadow cabinet have come out on picket lines with us so far and on the demonstrations as well. Right way across the public sector, Matt has made reference to the fire service in particular. Right way across the public sector, we've seen what's happened as a result of privatisation and underinvestment. And the reason that's taking place is, well, it's my brief basically. The reason that's taking place is because we've had an unfair tax system where the money has not been generated through a tax system as a result of large-scale tax evasion and tax avoidance. Now, even as a result of our campaign, we've been campaigning with the Tax Justice Campaign, Jeremy and I, for the last 15, 20 years. In fact, we organised the first meetings in Parliament with the Tax Justice Campaign, MC for Richard and John Christensen and all the others. And the reason it's happening is because we've had successive governments who've been dominated by the big accountancy firms who design our taxation system to enable the avoidance and evasion to take place. And the Treasury itself now says that their estimate of the tax gap is 34 billion. You've seen the other estimates that rise to 120 billion. We will ensure that we introduce a general avoidance rule which enables us to collect, I estimate, anything between 40 and 50 billion of that. We'll be able to then invest that money where? In our public services, of course, but also in terms of research and development. We want to ensure that we develop an entrepreneurial state on the lines of Mariana Mazzucato, one of our advisors, so that we grow the economy that will enable us then to fund the public services that we need. This is not rocket science, and what's bizarre about this, we've been arguing this for the last 10 months, because exactly as Matt has said, we won the argument on austerity. 12 months ago, we had a Labour Party going into a general, 15 months ago, we had a Labour Party going into a general election with policies austerity light. And the reason we lost it is time and time again, people write, we can't tell the difference between you. It's not about being economic. We went to the first Labour Party conference and made it clear from here on in we would be an anti-austerity party, that we would introduce a fair taxation system, we would invest in growing the economy, in that way we would afford the public services that we needed. And again, we would not allow our public services and our welfare state to be profited from by the private sector. That's where we've come to in those last, really this last 12, 10 months that we've been an administration. It's interesting, I've been on various platforms in this last few months as well, CBI, Federation of Small Businesses, Chamber of Commerce. It's interesting just how much now they're on the same page as us. And it's interesting, even Theresa May and Hammond now are having to talk about investing in the economy and making sure that we look at those areas of growth where we develop the products, the markets, etc., to make sure that we're competitive once again. They, I think, will fail to deliver. They'll fail to deliver because they'll mismanage the economy, because they won't tackle the real issues around profiteering and distribution of wealth and taking on the City of London and the banking practices that we have. But we will. We're creating a dynamic in terms of our economic policies, which is, you know, the old Gramsci term of hegemonizing, where you win the argument so much that everyone believes what you're saying is sound common sense. And that's what we're doing. But the tragedy of it is just as we're building, we're laying those foundations, just as we're succeeding in winning the intellectual argument, just as we're winning people to our cause, and it was demonstrated in everything that we've done over the last 10 months. Just as that was happening, we have the coup hit us in this way to set us back. I think it's a tragedy, not for Jeremy or me or others in the PLP who've supported Jeremy. It's not that. It's the tragedy for our movement and our whole community, just as it is. Just when we're needed the most, we have this attempted coup. It's important we understand what's going on and why. And it is a coup. It's a very British coup, isn't it? To quote this moment. And exactly as has been said, it didn't start after the EU referendum campaign. It started 2 minutes into Jeremy's acceptance speech when he won the leadership. I was there at QE2. To be honest, the leadership election campaign last year, all the candidates, leader and deputy leader, it was extremely comradely and amicable. We went into the green room on that day in QE2. There's a few tears and things like that, but when they announced the results. But actually it was extremely comradely. Jeremy and the others got on really well together. They toured around on the hustings, and it wasn't personal. It was exactly as we wanted. We wanted a debate on policy, not individual personality or anything like that. So when that announcement was made, what was disappointing, Jeremy did his speech, and within 2 minutes, across the screen, was an announcement by those shadow cabinet members resigning. So the coup started then. That's when it started. And the interesting thing is, you know, we knew their strategy. They are useless plotters. Because we would know what was going on in their meetings. They'd tell us. And the plot started by undermining Jeremy from day one, briefings to the media, etc. And then the idea was that the coup would take place at our first by-election failure, and that was meant to be Oldham. We were meant to lose Oldham, and then the coup would take place. What happened was, in Oldham, we had a fantastic local candidate, absolutely fantastic local candidate. We combined that with the enthusiasm of Jeremy's support, new support within the community, within the movement. We bust momentum supporters in and all the rest of it. And that strategy of combining that traditional with the new support and new enthusiasm meant we had an overwhelming success in the by-election. It was tremendous. So the coup didn't take place then. So the next opportunity was meant to be the mayoral and the local government elections. We were meant to lose those, be trounced, and then the coup would take place. What happened, as you know, we won every mayoral election, and in addition to that, we matched Ed Miliband at his highest. When the recession was at its deepest, we matched his performance in local government, and we held on to all those councils we were supposed to lose and gain some. What I thought was amazing, actually, I know London was a great victory for Sadiq, but actually that victory came on the basis of Jeremy's supporters and the campaign. It was exactly what happened in Oldham, the traditional support combined with the new enthusiasm, the new mass membership, getting that vote out right the way across every community. But I tell you, the thrill for me wasn't London. The thrill for me was Marvin Rees winning in Bristol. A black man winning in a city whose wealth had been on centuries of slavery. I thought that demonstrated for me just how far we've moved this country on when it comes to equality. And I thought it was tremendous. So the next opportunity for the coup was the EU referendum. And what happened there, I'll be straight with you, we met with Andrew Reid and Hilary Benn in September. They wanted to run the campaign. We said, fine, call us when you need us. We disagreed with some of the arguments they were putting forward. They wanted a completely Europhile campaign, and we said, that's not going to work, particularly outside of London. What you have to do, our theme was remain but reform. You have to demonstrate actually there's a need for reform. And we got attacked. We got attacked from the left. There were some who wanted to leave altogether, the Brexit supporters on the left, because of the treatment of Greece. So we brought across Yanis Varoufakis, who toured around with me, and we campaigned on the concept of another Europe is possible, where we get the benefits of the EU and we tackle some of the perceived benefits of that. And we were on doorstep. Jeremy travelled thousands of miles for that campaign, did more meetings than any other member of the Parliamentary Labour Party, including Alan Johnson, who's supposed to be leading the campaign, and worked tremendously hard. But they set him up during the campaign, just in case it went wrong. He was going to get the blame no matter what. And that's what happened. We had I think it was a tragedy that we lost. I regret it deeply. We'll have to deal with the consequences of it, and that's what we're doing. We're now working with socialists and social democratic leaders from across Europe, people who generally have built up a relationship with over the years because of this international work, and we're looking to see how we can construct a new Europe working with them so that we gain the benefits of the EU and overcome some of those perceived disbenefits. But what happened was on that Saturday, after the vote itself, 5:30 on that Saturday evening, we got a phone call from the Observer telling us that they'd been briefed that Hilary Benn was contacting shadow cabinet members to get them to resign that night. Jeremy tried to get hold of him, he got on the Rosie Winton, Chief Whip, couldn't find him, eventually tracked him down about midnight and said, look, this is classic Jeremy, this. Jeremy is one of the kindest and most compassionate people I've met in my life, all through politics, to be frank, and he's got that new politics of caring and compassion. In fact, I'm on the Jeremy Corbyn course about it, I'm only halfway through. I was 2/3 of the way through until a couple of weeks ago they sent me back. He contacted Hillary and said, look, pull back, we'll issue a statement, you don't have to resign. Hillary refused, so what else could he do but sack him? Nothing else he could do. What then happened, which we weren't aware about, was that we then had a group of shadow cabinet members resign. And we thought, fine, 4 have gone, we'll replace them, we can manage. But the tactic was that every hour or 2 hours, another group was resigned. And that was the plan that went on for that first 24 hours to destabilise. And the purpose was to undermine Jeremy's confidence and get him to resign after that first 24 hours. They underestimate the man, to be frank. They underestimate his character, but more importantly, they underestimate his commitment to our community, our principles, and our party. They underestimated him. So what we did is we constructed a new shadow cabinet, and we brought in, they don't like me calling this, but they brought, for my age I can, we brought in the youngsters. I don't mean Paul Flynn. He's been a star, I have to say. People like Becky Long-Bailey, Richard Bergen, Cathy Smith, Angela Rayner, Clive Lewis. And to be frank, they're the heroes and heroines of our movement. In my team, during the Finance Bill Committee, I'm sitting on the front bench in the council in the full Commons chamber. Becky Long-Bailey is up in the committee room. The person who is a member of her team and superior to her, just a position above, leading on the debate, resigned at committee in full camera. Resigned. Becky Long-Bailey, I get a text while I'm sitting on the common, on the front. I get a text, so-and-so is resigned in committee. Thank you very much. Becky Long-Bailey takes over the committee, has ran the committee all the way through, and next week we'll be finalising the bill on the floor of the House of Commons. A young woman in her 30s who at the end of that, despite everything that went on, and despite the bitter opposition of the Tories and the Libs on that committee, even they had to applaud her for what she did in terms of stepping into that. And what we've been able to do is mount an opposition in Parliament. We're going to carry the business. We then go into the campaign itself. We had the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting, and what happened was that I described it. People were getting up and saying to Jeremy, "You're a good bloke, you're a useless leader, you've got to go," and all this sort of. It was like a lynching. It was appalling, to be frank. And the irony of it was, well, the main argument was that we can't win elections with you. At that Parliamentary Labour Party meeting, the first item on the agenda was to welcome the successful candidate for Tooting who tripled their majority. We can't win elections. It was just, it was bizarre, it was surreal. They say we can't win elections. It's exactly the same. We've won every parliamentary by-election that we've had. In fact, 3 out of 4 we've increased our majority. We've won every mayoral election that's been put in front of us. We've won, in terms of council elections, better matched Ed Miliband in some instances better. We've won in the House of Commons on a whole series of actual issues that we've campaigned on in the Commons. We've softened the Tories up. Then we've done the deals with the House of Lords. I admit it, I want to abolish them for 30 years. I'm thinking about it again now. And we pushed them back on tax credits, on PIP, on some elements of the trade union bill. We've won on 22 occasions. That's unheard of. Unheard of. The other thing they threw at Jeremy is that he's not a leader. He's not a leader. Let me just say this, it's been mentioned earlier. I do not want to go back to having a leader that takes us to war in Iraq against the wishes of his own party and against the million people marching in the streets. I want a leader who listens, who actually prevents conflict by bringing people together, and in that way taking us all with him on the basis of democratic decision-making. That's the sort of leader that Jeremy is. Now, when the Shadow Cabinet members resigned, we held our best as we could, and we urged them at that point in time there shouldn't be a leadership election. We thought we could resolve the differences. And we said if there are weaknesses that you can identify, if you've made mistakes, we understand that, come back and help us overcome those mistakes. If there are issues about how we present ourselves, if there are issues of policy, let's talk about it and resolve it. That's Jeremy's style. I struggle with it at times, I admit it, but that was the whole approach that we did. But no, they triggered a leadership election. And I was amazed, to be honest. As I said, Angela was first of all standing, and then Owen. I'm amazed we have a leadership election in 2016, to be frank, without a woman being on the ballot. I find it extraordinary. It was like going back to 1916. But they forced Angela off, and then Owen came forward. And to be frank, if you've watched the hustings, I regret how personal they've been. I really do. And I regret the way in which some of the tone that has been taken against Jeremy has been as well. But I'm hoping now that we now move forward and we have the ballot. You saw what happened, it's been mentioned earlier. They've done everything possible to undermine Jeremy's chances of winning. First of all, to try and prevent him being on the ballot paper, which was bizarre. Then we had Michael Foster, a rich donor, coming along to challenge us legally, when we'd won the vote to get him on the ballot paper, to challenge us legally to take him off the ballot paper. That would have meant one rich donor denying 500,000 people the right to vote for a candidate of their choice. Never. We won that. But then what happened at the NEC, as people were leaving, a paper was laid round, and there was a vote, and that vote was about this 6-month retrospective membership that they imposed. That vote was 14-14, and it carried. So 14 people have denied up to 140,000 people the right to vote. Then some of them then think, oh, right, we'll pay the 25 quid. But I've had lots of emails from people saying, actually, I can't afford the 25 quid. I've already paid out for membership, and I don't have that sort of income to enable me to happen. So they've lost the right to vote. But others did pay the 25 quid. Now, many of them are being purged for the most bizarre reasons, to be frank. And if it is the word about language and stuff like that, why am I still in? And to be frank, if you associate yourself by coming with me tonight, I'd be really careful. This is not the party. This is not the party we think of democracy. And to also, we've never had a situation in our party where we've been banned from meeting. Because that's what they also introduced at that NEC as well. So they've thrown everything at us. And then their friends in the media started to, well, that's been going on for some time. It's been, I'm the secretary of the NUJ group in Parliament as well. I defend the rights of journalists all the way across the world. In fact, we've been campaigning to make sure we preserve the right to journalists, the freedom of speech, the freedom to write, etc. But what's been the treatment from the media, to be frank, over the last 12 months has been a disgrace. And it's not just us saying it, it sounds like the left whining. If you look at the LSE report that was done about the first 3 months of Jeremy and his treatment by the media, an objective analysis of every appearance in the media, and it basically said the media's moved in relation to Jeremy Corbyn from being a watchdog to an attack dog. And it's the same with the BBC, and I stood on picket lines time and time again to defend the BBC, to defend the licence fee and all the rest of them, campaigning with them, organised meetings in Parliament as well. The Greenwich report recently also analysed the BBC's treatment of Jeremy and said actually it's an example of political bias on a scale they've not seen for a long period of time in our history. And it's been bizarre. They've tracked all our families, doorstep every family member of the family have had. With Jeremy, they found it really difficult, so they went back 4 generations and found that one of his uncles, great great-great-great-great-uncle ran a workhouse. What a swine that Jeremy was. With me, Matt knows this, with me, I'd been married twice, and my former wife got remarried, and their friends and all the rest of it, and they doorstepped my first wife up in Lancashire, the Daily Mail, and they offered the money for an interview. And Mark, her husband, and Marilyn phoned me and said, we told them to get along. I said, you should have taken the money. It would have been a great holiday. And Matt knows this one as well, because we've been on the same platform. We moved from Liverpool, we went to East Anglia, where my mum originally came from, and they put an advert in the Eastern Daily Press, do you know John McDonnell? And some woman wrote in and said, yes, I'd like to be at primary school. And the maths test, he used to whisper me the answers to prevent me being paid by his sister gracious. And I thought that was really lovely. And then someone tweeted out, I always knew he was a cheat. And it just goes on. Last night we were in Ealing, and I was asked a question about the future of the Labour Line. Will we be able to work together again? I said, yes, we will. Because I think MPs will go back to their constituencies, they'll engage with their constituencies, and that will encourage us to cooperate at the national level. There's a headline tonight from the Evening Standard in London. McDonnell urges party members to bully their MPs. You were there, Matt, weren't you? It's extraordinary the distortions that are going on, and we're coming through. But what we discovered last year, and what we're discovering this year, is a number of things about how we communicate. First of all, you don't lead with your chin all the time, you know. Stop chucking the red books about it doesn't really work. But also, you communicate. We've got social media now that we never had before. So we're using social media on a scale we've not experienced in the past. Yeah, we're learning lessons from Bernie Sanders. More importantly, we're learning lessons from the original Obama campaign. And young people and others are coming together, doing films and getting that message out. Next week, we're launching a film done by Ken Loach of the campaign. It's fantastic. We've got a whole range of activities that are going on. People just volunteering their expertise to get the media message out there in the best way we can. But also what we discovered last year, we discovered this year, we're reinventing the word of mouth as a means of political communication. Jeremy's been touring around the country this session as well. We think already he's spoken to about 70,000 people. I don't know whether you saw the video about Liverpool, where 10,000 people turned up and they closed the whole town centre off. Matt and I were at the first Parliamentary Square meeting, which was actually convened with 24 hours notice, packed at Parliamentary Square. He's been on, because we've got an election expenses cap, we've been doing meetings in the open air rather than in halls because it's less expensive. And he's had meetings in Hull where a couple of thousand people turn up and apart. And what's good about it isn't just talking to Labour Party members and supporters, it's other people just turning up as well, and we're recruiting them. Matt has said we're now one of the largest political parties we are the largest political party in Europe now, over 500,000 members. I think we can build a party that's 1 million members within the next 2 years. And we do it on the basis of why you gave your support last year, why you've given such solidarity this year, is because what Jeremy has done is his campaigning this year and last year has given people hope again. Hope. A confidence of restoring trust in politics and, yes, political representatives. We've had enough of spin and triangulation and plastic politicians. We want people who have principles, believe in what they say, and are going to implement what they say. And that's what Jeremy embodies. That's our politics now. And I think on that basis, he'll be re-elected. But it isn't going to be easy. It isn't going to be easy. I say it's not going to be easy because with those 140,000 being ruled out, the purge that's been going on, the media battering that's happening, and also the new tactic now, which is about how much we're winning already, so it sows complacency amongst our supporters. So I'm pleading with you now. I'm just pleading with you, just as you did last year, and just as you've given us solidarity for this last 10 months, I urge you to recognise our responsibility on all of our individual shoulders. Not just to vote for Jeremy now, but also to mobilise others to vote. To make sure that in a month's time, when that result comes out, we don't just match what we did last year, but we actually increase our mandate. Because in that way, I think we'll be able to then, from some position of strength, be able to talk to those comrades who've resigned or pulled back or whatever, to urge them to come back, to talk to us about why they stood down. What are the real issues? If it is about style of leadership, if it is about professions, let's talk about that and see how we can resolve those problems. If it is about policy, then it doesn't seem to be. Because quite frankly, the most common expression Owen Smith has used is I agree with Jeremy. So if there is issues around policy, we can resolve them, and the way we resolve them is through democracy within our party. So I just urge you now in this next few weeks to take our responsibilities seriously, return Jeremy with a stronger mandate if we possibly can, despite all these difficulties. Because when we get back in, we will resolve the differences that we have. I believe the vast bulk of the Parliamentary Labour Party want to just get on with the job, and I think they'll start working together again. We'll look at how we increase our membership. We'll look at how we ensure complete democracy with our party in the development of policies and the campaigning. And in that way, we will use this period to build then for the general election campaign for whenever it comes. Because I believe, Theresa May is going through a honeymoon at the moment, but the Tories will soon rip themselves apart on Europe or any other issue. And we've got to be ready, not just to win the campaign, but to ready to go back into government. And when we go back into government, that's when the attacks on us will really come. And that's when we'll need a mass base of support within our communities. But we tell people what we're about. And put simply, it's this. They always this debate last year, or the year before, about what's the difference between right and left. And they went to people who they asked Roberto Bobbio, the Italian philosopher, and he said the difference between the right and left is that the right always increases inequality, the left always reduces it. So the society we want to create is we want to radically transform our society. So it's radically fairer, more equal, more democratic. Yes, based upon a prosperous economy, which is economically and environmentally sustainable, but where that prosperity is shared by all. We use a word again that almost got banned for a decade within our party. It's called socialism. I just want to thank you again for your support and solidarity for Jeremy and all that he embodies. But it's all that you embody as well, those principles of socialism, that if we have the courage and determination, above all else, the solidarity, will see us through. Solidarity.